In December 1926, the entire world was obsessed with one person, Agatha Christie. Now, if you don't know the name, she basically invented the modern mystery novel. She was brilliant, she was methodical, and at this point in history, she was at the absolute top of her game. But on a Friday night in early December, something happened that didn't make any sense. Agatha Christie didn't just go missing, she vanished in a way that felt like it came straight out of one of her own books. It was eerie, it was calculated, and it felt wrong. To understand how we got there, we have to look at what happened just hours before she disappeared. Around 9:30 p.m. on December 3rd, 1926, the quiet of the Christie household was shattered. Agatha got into a heated argument with her husband. Now, we don't know every word that was said behind those closed doors, but we know it was bad enough that Agatha finally reached her absolute breaking point. She did something then that haunts the case to this day. She went upstairs to her 7-year-old daughter Rosalind and gave her a kiss goodnight while the girl was sleeping. It was a moment of quiet in the middle of a storm. After that, without a word, she simply left. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She just walked out of the house, climbed into her Morris Cowley, and drove off into the cold night. That was the last time anyone would see her for nearly 2 weeks. The next morning, her car was found in Berkshire, near a place called Silent Pool. Now, this is basically just a deep, dark chalk pit. A local man saw the car just sitting there, right at the very edge of the cliff. It looked like it could have rolled over the side at any second. When the police got there, they realized it was Agatha's car, but the weird part was how they found it. The headlights, they were still on, but they were dim because the battery was almost dead. On the seat, Agatha had left her fur coat, even though it was freezing outside. Her driver's license was there too, a small bag of clothes in the back. But there was no blood, no signs of a struggle, and 0 footprints leading away from the car. It was like she had just evaporated. The news hit the front pages immediately, and the police realized they weren't just dealing with a missing person. They were dealing with a puzzle that didn't have all the pieces. What really messed with people's heads was that just a few months before this, Agatha had released a book called The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. Now, if you've read it, you know it has a twist that completely broke the rules of mystery writing. It's the ultimate example of an unreliable narrator. The idea that you cannot trust the person telling the story. So, while the police are out there searching the woods, everyone else is wondering, is this a real tragedy? Or is the most famous mystery writer on the planet playing a massive trick on us? Is she actually the unreliable narrator in her own disappearance? We're going to look at the clues she left behind and the things she tried to make sure no one ever found. Once that car was found, the world stopped. The New York Times reported that over 100 police officers were on the ground by the first weekend. But the search was almost over before it truly began. On December 8th, Christie's brother-in-law told police he'd received a letter from Agatha. She said she was just going to a spa in Yorkshire for rest and treatment. The police almost bought it, but something felt off. See, Agatha hadn't just written one letter. She'd written 4. One to her secretary, saying she wouldn't be back that night. One to her best friend, Charlotte, saying she just needed to get away because it just wasn't fair. And then there was the letter to her husband, Archie. When Archie received his, he did something incredibly suspicious. He read it, and then he immediately destroyed it. He refused to tell anyone what it said. Because of that, the police didn't stop. They doubled down, and suddenly, detectives weren't just looking for a missing woman. They were looking for a body. The search grew into a massive operation, over 10,000 volunteers and dozens of tracking dogs. Because the car was found near a natural spring, the leading theory was suicide, that she had drowned herself in the dark. But investigators, they were also looking at Archie. He was a former World War I pilot, a man of action, and he had a motive. It came out that their marriage was a disaster. They've been married since 1914. They had a daughter, but Archie was done. He was having an affair with a much younger woman named Nancy Neal, and he'd actually asked for a divorce. On the morning she vanished, they'd had a massive blow-up, and Archie had left to spend the weekend with his friends and his mistress. Archie had an alibi, but the police, they weren't convinced. They even started floating a theory that Agatha had fled to London and was hiding in plain sight, disguised in men's clothing. While the police were literally dredging lakes and thousands of volunteers were scouring the woods in Berkshire, life was continuing as normal at the Swan Hydropathic Hotel in Harrogate. Harrogate was a posh spa town, hundreds of miles away from that empty car at Silent Pool. It was the kind of place where people went to escape the world, to take the mineral waters, listen to the evening bands, and basically just disappear into luxury. About 11 days after the car was found, a banjo player in the hotel band started looking closely at one of the guests. She was a woman who had checked in as Mrs. Tressa Neal from South Africa. She was charming. She was joining in on the evening dances, and she seemed perfectly at ease. But the musician couldn't shake the feeling that he'd seen her face before. It was on every front page in the country. He eventually went to the police, and on December 14th, the mystery of the missing queen was officially over. But the details that came out next, they made the world realize this wasn't just a vacation. When the police arrived at the hotel and confirmed it was indeed Agatha, the most shocking detail wasn't that she was alive. It was the name she had chosen to use. Remember, she didn't just pick a random alias. She had signed the guest register as Mrs. Tressa Neal. To any other guest, it was just a name, but to Agatha and her husband Archie, it was a weapon. Because, as we talked about earlier, Archie had told Agatha he wanted a divorce so he could be with a woman named Nancy Neal. Agatha hadn't just vanished. She had assumed the identity of the woman who was currently replacing her. She took the surname of her husband's mistress and walked into a high-end hotel with it. As a writer, you have to look at that and ask, was this a cry for help? Or was this a masterfully crafted psychological revenge plot? Think about the weight of that choice. In the world of thrillers, this is called the double. The idea of becoming the person you fear or hate the most. By checking into a hotel under the mistress's name, Agatha made it impossible for Archie to keep his affair a secret. The second the press found her, they found that name. She effectively dragged his private betrayal into the public spotlight, and she did it without ever saying a single word to a reporter. She didn't just disappear. She wrote herself into the one role Archie could not ignore. She wasn't the victim in the woods anymore. She was the woman in the hotel, living under his mistress's name, waiting for him to come and find her. Now, some people believe she was in a state of fugue or total amnesia, that her brain literally broke under the trauma of her mother's death and her marriage ending. But others think she was playing a game of high-stakes chess, and with that one name on a hotel register, she had just called checkmate. When Archie Christie finally arrived at the hotel to collect his wife, the world expected an explanation. Instead, they got a wall of silence. Agatha greeted him with a blank stare. She claimed she had no idea who he was or how she had gotten to Harrogate. The official story? It became that she had suffered a total amnesic fugue, a psychological state where the brain essentially resets itself to escape a trauma too heavy to carry. And for the rest of her life, Agatha never wavered. She lived for another 50 years. She wrote dozens more masterpieces. She became the best-selling novelist of all time. But she never spoke about those 11 days. She never gave an interview about it. She never used it as a plot in a book. And when she wrote her massive 500-page autobiography, she left the year 1926 out almost entirely. It was as if those 11 days simply didn't exist in her version of reality. Because she wouldn't talk, the rest of the world never stopped. To this day, historians and fans are divided into two camps. The first, they believe the tragedy. They see a woman who had lost her mother, was losing her husband, and simply broke. Her mind created Tressa Neal as a shield, a way to survive the impossible. But then there's the second camp, the one that looks at her career as a master of the plot. They see a woman who was being humiliated by a cheating husband and decided to fight back using the only weapon she had, a mystery. By abandoning her car in a way that looked like a crime scene, she forced the police to investigate Archie. By using his mistress's name at the hotel, she made sure his affair was public record forever. If it was a revenge plot, it was perfect. She didn't have to say a word. She just let the world's imagination do the work for her. We will never know the truth, and maybe that's exactly how she wanted it. Agatha Christie wrote 66 detective novels. She created some of the most famous solutions in literary history. But in the end, her most successful mystery was the one she never gave us the answer to. She proved that sometimes the most powerful thing a writer can do is stop talking. In a world built on distorted truths, the reality is rarely as clean as it seems. If you're ready to help me uncover the next fracture in our history, hit the like button and subscribe to join the investigation. Your support is the only thing that keeps these stories from being swallowed by the dark. Keep your eyes open, and remember, the most dangerous secrets are the ones that never leave the room. I'll see you in the next mystery.